assignment. I see there's 19 of you. There's a couple that have not submitted it. And if you have, then I would encourage you to please do apply for an extension. And if you have applied for an extension, I'm looking forward to receiving your submission. And also well done to everybody that sort of were asking questions and wanted clarity. And I do hope that the guidance that I did give you on both on the sessions and the pre-recorded sessions, whether it was sufficient for you to be able to do your assignment. I know there was one or two that was struggling with answering one or two questions. Once again, one, be gentle with yourself and be graceful. Two, try not to have too high expectations for your marks. I know some of you have sort of indicated that you want 80% for your assignment and you really want to work hard on it. And I absolutely applaud that. But again, just temper your expectations. And three, I will be looking at those assessments this week, and marks should be out by next week. It does mean that you need to start working on your second assessment as well. And I would encourage you to start working on that as soon as possible. So I'm just trying to close the window here. I'm moving my camera. And I do see that there's a bit of chatter as I'm touching the desk. All right, let me not chatter any further. All righty. Let's see. I think that's the presentation. All righty. And let me, if you don't need subtitles, just hold on 1 second for me. Let me just grab my clicker. But before we move onto our session, was there any, and I want you guys just to jump in so we can record it as well. Was there anything out of the assignment that you felt you weren't prepared for, or that was unclear, that you only started? Because once you start doing the assignment, that is when sort of questions come up. And I'm not low-key judging in your view that started with the assignment on Sunday, but sometimes because some of us manage our time differently, we do sort of leave things for close to the deadline. And once you start working on it, you suddenly realize, oh, okay, I didn't understand this, or I didn't think to ask this question. And then you're up against a deadline, and then things get very, very tight. So please ask me now, before I carry on with tonight's session, please ask me now if there was anything in the assignment that you felt that you weren't prepared for, or was sort of caught you off guard, and you sort of needed to sit back and go, oh, okay, let me just think through this a bit. Please do jump in. Anyone?
Evening, Theo.
Yeah,
Lerato here.
Yes. Yes, Lerato.
For me, I wouldn't say there was anything that. Am I cutting off? Oh, okay. I need to change devices then.
So, sorry, Lerato, I didn't hear that.
Hi, are you able to hear me now? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, just drop it in the chat. Awesome. Scarlett, you've got your hand up. Go for it. Scarlett, you can go. All right, I'm back. I just dropped there for a minute. Scarlett, you got your hand up? And I know Lorata was busy typing. All right, let me move on. Everybody can still hear me? Just give me a thumbs up if the sound is still all right. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sanika. Thanks, Andre. All right. And what to extend detail needed to include was difficult. Okay. Yes, Lorata, I know the assignment was very, I think it was only 2,500 words. And you needed to use the rubric quite extensively to know exactly what is required in terms of the assignment, in terms of where to put your focus on. Because again, the questions did have a mark allocation, but the questions in between didn't have sort of a breakdown as into this is 2 marks and this is 3 marks and this is 3 marks or 2 marks or 5 marks. And you kind of have to look at each one of them and go, okay, so there's 2 questions. How much where do I put the detail in? Good, but I do hope that the rubric was helpful. All right. Do see Scarlett is also typing, so let me just wait quickly and see what her comment is before I move on. Yeah, absolutely. And I hope, okay, so what I will do is I will for the second assignment I'll be a bit more sort of directive in terms of what to expect or what I'm expecting from each answer, the amount of detail, and maybe give you a bit more guidance on that to say that, listen, if this is the question, this is how much detail I'm looking for, 5 points or 6 points or 7 points in terms of that. So thank you for that feedback, and I'll take that on board when we do the second assignment. Great stuff. So last week, I do apologize. Last week we missed each other. I did not have an online session, but I do know that some of you were quite busy with your assignments and sort of just catching up on the quizzes. And I do hope that that the time was sort of well spent. There won't be any recording for last week. It is very much supply chain management, and it's about just looking at it and seeing how does it fit in. So use the Porter's value chain as a very good, and I'll keep on coming back to Porter's value chain. It's such a very good sort of way of looking at a value additive service. So we continue with the cafe example in terms of our storytelling and understanding some of these concepts that we'll be touching on in today's session, which is about human resource management, which is about the people. So if operations is the engine, if human resources is the heart of the business, it's about finding the right people for in the right positions in order to deliver the right customer service and ultimately innovative, creative customer service for your business. So we look at what is human resource management and its role that it plays in terms of all the other functions, how it integrates with other functions, and also we look at the South African sort of People Practices Act, sort of their framework and their value chain that they use, as well as the case study. So this week, I've actually given you quite a bit of extensive case study. It's quite a long read. And I've given it to you in your off weekend. When I say off week, inverted commas, it's sort of the week after the assignment. So you're not really pressured to start working on your next assignment. It's quite a bit of reading. And it's such a good case study to really sort of read through and fully understand how sort of human resource management work in a real world context. It's a great case study, a lot of detail. So please do take the time to read through it. It's part of your discussion. And I'll be looking at those discussions a bit closer this week to see the type of comments that you guys are making on each other's answering the question on one way, the two questions, but also how you're responding to the comments made by others. So human resource management is part of those what we call supporting functions within the organization. So inbound logistics, operations, and outbound marketing and sales is sort of your primary functions within the organization, which is that value additive part of the business. Then your support functions like IT and human resource management, procurement, and all of those sort of functions are those that support it. It's not less important. It's actually it's become a lot more important over the last few years. Human resource management or human capital is often sort of, they talk about human capital. I don't like that word, human capital. It almost feels like it is. And the whole thing about, people are the greatest, the organization's greatest asset. It dehumanizes people. It makes people less human. People are not capital. People are not resources like a desk and a computer. People are people, and people have a soul. People have motivations. People have drives. People have dreams. And often we hear this whole idea that, in order for companies to be competitive, they need to use the human capital and the human resources as a competitive advantage and competitive edge. And to a certain extent, that is true. To a certain extent, that is true. To other extent, it's sort of you have this tension between looking at the organization as this mechanistic entity. Think of a watch, those old-timey mechanical watches where all of the little pieces and all of the little gears have to run together just right in order for that watch to be efficient in time. And when you look at the organization from a very mechanistic view, and it goes back to the old, when we first tried to define what management science is, and we looked at not Skinner, but we looked at scientific management. This idea that people are these cogs in the wheel, and an organization is like this massive sort of machine, and everybody has to work. And it was very much focused on efficiency and doing more with less, and sort of focused on trying to drive sort of efficiency through moving people and they even had what they used to call sort of movement studies, in which they would time how long it takes for you to do a certain activity, and then they will extrapolate that. If it takes you so many minutes to do one activity, you should be able to do that activity over and over again 15 times in a minute or in an hour, etc. And that is how they would sort of calculate in very scientific form, calculate sort of efficiency. And that was very much a mechanistic view of viewing organizations. And that sort of was very much how we looked at organizations. People were like everything else in the organization. There were just resources to ensure that you have to use those resources in the most efficient way. through the 1960s, with sort of Maslow introducing the whole idea of hierarchical needs and motivational theories, we suddenly realized, not suddenly, we always knew that organizations consisted of people, and people aren't all the same. They're not cogs in the wheel. And we sort of swung the other way, away from a mechanistic point of view to a more, what we call a humanistic point of view, where organizations were seen, and right through the 60s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s, people were seen as partners to the organization. They were seen as the most important part of the organization. They were lauded as being, they are the ones that give an organization a competitive edge, and there was this investment in training and making sure that people have the right skills. And there was even a whole entire sort of part of management theory that worked with ergonomics and understanding how you move things in the office around so that people have the right lighting and the right chairs and the right desks, and you're arranged in a certain way so that people can be optimized. And we use the word optimized, moving away from efficiency. But at the heart of it was still the same thing, doing more with less. So we no longer talk about efficiency, but now we talk about optimization. Through the 1990s and into the 2000s, there was a shift again away from trying to optimize, making best of, and trying to have the best environment for people to thrive and become more and develop and grow, to a look at how do we look at the individual and understand how do we match them with the right job, how do we motivate them, how do we get people to want to come to work, which is again a different view, a different way of looking at things. And it was this balance, and trying to find this balance between efficiency, optimization, and sort of human drive and organizational performance, and the understanding that the organizations consist of people, and people have feelings, and people have emotions, people have drives, and people have dreams. And how do you harness that? So again, it was this attempt to harness people's motivations, and we moved away from a clock as a way of looking at a organizational machine, away from the best possible optimize the workplace, to what we now call sort of more purpose-driven organizations. So purpose-driven organizations are those organizations that speak to the heart of people, and they say, your values and our values must be aligned. So if you believe in certain things, we as no, so organization becomes almost like a living, breathing entity with its own values, with its own motivations. And now suddenly you have a purpose-driven organization. An organization is driven by a greater purpose. It's not just about money, it's about something more, it's more altruistic. And that's really how we've seen sort of human resource management as a function within business changed over time. Very much in the beginning, human resource management was seen to be, it was literally called personnel management. You were stuck in a corner, and the only thing that you were responsible for was making sure that interviews are set up and job descriptions are written out. And that has shifted into human resource management. Now we call them business partners, in which human resource management has become integral to the organizational function, because ultimately an organization is driven by people. An organization is driven by its values that rest within the people. It's driven by the culture, which is the belief system, the combined belief systems and rituals and artifacts that are designed around the people that gives the organization culture. It's significant. So human resource management has really changed over time. In South Africa, we have the South African sort of people practices, board of people practices. which aims to professionalize human resource management, because in finance we have a professional body, which means you become a chartered accountant or you become an auditor. So we've got professional bodies that sort of guide the ethical behavior of those professionals. And we don't look at human resource management almost in the same way. And what the board is trying to do, is trying to professionalize sort of people practices and trying to sort of give a framework to say that, listen, yeah, just like CAs, just like, doctors, just like nurses, just like counselors, just like architects, people practitioners also have sort of a set of ethical behavior and a set of policies that guides their behavior. They sort of put this together, and it will be good for you to just have a look at it. It's not key. I mean, when you're doing, if you should be doing HR, it becomes a key part of what you should know if you're going to become an HR professional. But if not, it's good to know sort of how they're trying to sort of professionalize the sort of the job, because it's very fragmented. So a set of ethics, a set of certifications, so that people can know that, if you have that certification, then you are a member in good standing. So part of sort of business and people strategy is about aligning the organizations. Why is there a big blank space? I don't know. So imagine for a minute, an organization says, listen, as part of our strategic objective is to grow our market share by 10% or by 15%. And then, so that's a strategic objective. So strategic, whenever you hear the word strategic, it's a plan, but it's a long-term plan. A strategy, a strategic objective is a long-term plan. And as part of that strategic objective, there'll be a whole bunch of different steps or goals in between. Goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 3, 4. And these goals are very specific. They're measurable. They sort of, they have a deadline to it. And within each goal, there's a series of actions that needs to be implemented. So you've got a series of actions that translate into a goal, and those goals are these steps that move you closer to your strategic objective. So they want to grow their market share by 15% over the next 3 years. That is an organizational goal. And now each one of the functions would now be responsible for translating that organizational strategic objective into a specific goal for their function. Operations would go off and they say, okay, in order for us to grow our market share, we need to sell more widgets. In order to sell more widgets, we need more equipment. We need to install another line. And in order for us to do all of that, we need more space in our manufacturing facility, because 15% increase in market share translates into 1.5 million extra widgets per year. So they do that calculation. They then go off to finance, and they say to finance, we need over the next 3 years this equipment, we need to install it here, and this is how, and then finance goes away, and then they sort of find the financing in order to pay for the capital expenses for this expansion. So that's HR. Supply chain goes off and they say, listen, we're going to be shipping an extra 1.5 million widgets, so we need to increase our supply chain. We need maybe an extra 2 trucks, and we need extra drivers, and we need extra routes, et cetera, over the next 3 years. So they put a supply chain plan together. And each one of the functions does that. And then all of them would then submit their plans to HR and say, listen, HR, over the next 3 years, we're going to need so many operators, so many technicians, so many drivers. Marketing goes away and say, we need to increase our market share by 15%. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it by the following things: introduce new widgets, introduce widgets with different features, and they put a plan together. They then also go to fund and say, we need more money for this particular marketing campaign in order to sell more widgets, 1.5 million, in fact, per year. They then go to HR. HR then receives all of this information. HR then aligns their talent management, which means just a fancy word for making sure that they have the right people in place for when the different functions need them. And that is when this idea of a business partner comes in place, because operations and marketing and supply chain and IT and all of these different functions would partner with HR and say, HR, this is in 6 months' time, when that new line is installed, I'm going to need 5 technicians or 5 machine operators ready to go. Supply chain say, listen, I'm going to need 2 more drivers, and I'm going to need a Heister operator. And marketing says, I need a new sort of junior brand manager, and I need maybe another 2 marketing interns. And HR is responsible for making sure that they have the right people ready for when it is required by the business. At the same time, so that's just one function of it, strategic human resource management, people planning. Management is another part of this whole, because they might have a graduate, let's say junior brand manager at the moment, that they've identified to develop into becoming a brand manager. And that will align to this position that they will need for the expansion in the market that they're looking for. So that's talent management. Training and development would be, how do you train the people that you have at the moment to step up into these new roles that's going to become available? And then obviously there's risk management, governance and risk management. Because remember, this also works in reverse. If for whatever reason the organization is finding itself in a very challenging position, and one of the strategic goals is to reduce what they call headcount, the amount of people in the organization, reduce it by 15% due to market conditions, due to a competitor that has come in. But in order to survive, they need to reduce the amount of people that they have or consolidate the business with fewer people. HR will then have to look at how do they, within the scope of sort of our labor laws, how do they reduce the workforce by that amount. So it goes both ways. And it is the way it is really sort of changed over time is that it's become business partners, it's become strategic. Because if HR is not aware of what the long-term plan is or what the strategic objective is for the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, they won't be able to put their plans in place. They won't be able to put learning journeys in place or learning plans in place, development plans. They won't have time to put in place any talent management plans as well. In addition to that, HR is also responsible for what we call performance management as well. So remember, 15% increase over 3 years, and each year that's an additional 1.5 million widgets. Now, you would then put that down as what we call a KPI or key performance indicator. And part of the performance plan that we would put in place is that you would encourage people to work towards that objective through a bonus scheme, for instance, or incentive scheme. To say, once we achieve that objective, we will pay you a bonus for achieving that particular objective. That is what we call then a performance management process. There might also be a reward and recognition plan or a policy in place as well in order to move the organization in that particular direction. When we think of sort of our cozy cafe, it's about knowing who you're going to need, when you're going to need them, and what level they're going to be within the organization. And how do you know that? There's this process of what we call job analysis, and then the recruitment process, the recruitment and selection process. So job analysis is knowing the skills that you require. Remember, back to the widgets, back to the factory. I'm going to need 2 machine operators. Now, the new line that they implemented is a new product that they're looking at selling. Remember, additional 1.5 million widgets. One of that is a new product that they aim at selling, but it's a new machine, which means that the machine operator has a different skill set to the machine operators that's currently within organizations. So you need to then identify what are the skills and the knowledge needed in order to operate that particular piece of equipment. That is what we call job analysis. That then gets translated into a job description. That job description then gets translated into selection criteria that you would then post for and advertised internally and externally in order to select the right person. Another part is this whole element of learning and development. Organizations have become very much driven by this idea that it is better to promote internally. That's for certain positions and in certain circumstances. In most cases, it's better to promote internally. The advantages are that the person is already in the business, they already understand the culture of the organization, they already understand all the policies and procedures, and also it actually costs less to promote internally. Because if you move that junior brand manager, which was a graduate, if you move that person to a brand manager position, they'll get maybe a bump in their salary by 25% or 30%, which is significant for that person. But you might get a person from the outside that you have to employ. Now that person is already a brand manager. They want an increase on their current salary. So if you then moving somebody in from the outside, you're going to have to increase their salary in order to make it enticing for them or to make it worthwhile for them to come over into your organization. So it's generally speaking a lot cheaper to promote internally. But also that person already has all of the culture and the values of the organization already embedded. So learning and development is part of this process to recognize specific learning and development activities that will bring the person or people up to a certain level. In the case of our baristas, for our cafe, it's about how do you develop your people in such a way that they can add to their skill set. And also become sort of path to promotion as well. So maybe there's a barista that is quite keen and works really hard, and you might promote them to become assistant manager based on certain criteria as well. Another part of it is performance management. So I said earlier, it's linked to the organization goals, and it's about encouraging feedback and recognition. Then we generally have what we call a reward and recognition system in place as well, which is essentially your pay scales, your bonuses, and then also other things as well. It's also flexible shifts. Nowadays, it's also working from home. Working from home is seen as a benefit that's get added onto your salary. Some people even have asked for, and they said, listen, I'll be willing to take a 10% reduction in pay if you allow me to work from home 3 days out of the week. And people are willing to do that because they weigh up the cost, they weigh up the benefit of working from home versus driving in, spending all that money on parking, spending all of that money on petrol, and the 10% actually works out to less than what they would be spending going into work. So nowadays, especially post-COVID, working from home has been seen as a benefit. And it becomes negotiable how you can use that benefit. Another element is employee wellness, which has become even, especially post-COVID, it become more and more sort of part of the overall, not just criteria, but the job function of human resource management. Is to look at the wellness, the employee wellness. The worst thing to do is to spend all that time on training somebody, the barista, sending them on the creative latte course, training them to become assistant manager, and then another cafe opens down the road and they leave to go and work there. All of that time and effort that was spent on that person is now gone. All that investment is gone. And people tend to leave companies for a few reasons. One is better opportunity, but so often, and more so often, it's about the environment. They don't feel that the environment is right for them. The environment is either toxic or the environment is challenging for them, and they don't feel comfortable in the environment anymore. There's a saying in HR that people don't leave companies, they leave managers, they leave their employers, not the company. People might feel okay, or they might feel happy working there, but the manager or their direct superior or even the people that they're working with are not great people. So employee wellness is one of those areas which is quite an important part of the overall of looking after the entire person, the whole person, as they would call it. And then there's the review phase. There is human resource management actually do have hard metrics, just like finance have accounting reports and things and numbers that we look at. So HR also have metrics that they look at. They look at things like staff turnover rates, how many people are leaving, absenteeism. Do we have all of our compliance documents in place? Do we have a code of conduct? Do we have a disciplinary process? All of these compliance details and elements are part of the HR function. And compliance is about protecting the organization against possible sort of employees leaving and then feeling aggrieved. And then we've got a grievance process set up within South Africa, which is the CCMA, the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. And any employee that feels that if they're victimized or feels that they're not being treated properly, can go to the CCMA and actually lay a charge. And part of that compliance is about making sure that all of the documents that needs to be signed, all of the policies and procedures that needs to be done are done and is on file and easily accessible. And that's the role of HR. It's one of the key roles. So as I said, I've given you the case study. Please have a look at it. Please take a read through it. It is a fantastic case study, very well put together. And the questions are essentially is the HR department structure issue like our turnover, again, a metric, training problems, bread deliveries, leadership, how is it practical is the current HR at Derby, using the SABPP model, identify specific HR standard, talent management, employee wellness, where the department fails to add value and explain why in your opinion. So it's quite a bit of reading and then looking at the sort of Bureau of People Practices model and going, okay, where are they not doing what they're supposed to be doing? And then the second question then is, so what now? What are you going to do about it? So it's a great case study for you to have a read through and a good opportunity for you to be able to comment on each other's things. The HR is also the ethical gatekeeper. They make sure that all the compliance things, ethics training, whistleblower protection, there's a culture of integrity, there's fair hiring or fair employment practices are in place. And if finance is the person looking after the money, if the CEO in top management is about the head of the organization, if supply chain operations is the hands and feet, and if marketing is the mouth, then HR is the heart of the organization. HR is the heart. HR holds the values of the organization. They're supposed to. But now this is the tension. You are there to protect the company. You are there to protect the employees from each other. But ultimately, you work for the company. You don't work for the manager that comes and complains about somebody and say, find some evidence for me to fire this person because I don't like them. You don't work for them, even though you're their business partner. You work ultimately for the organization, and you're there to ensure that the organization's well-being of the organization as a person, well-being is considered, is looked after, compliance. And you don't look after an employee either. Employee comes and complains about the manager. I don't like my manager, and I want to lay a complaint. You're not there to defend. You're not there their side either. So you essentially are on no one's side. As the HR manager, you're on the company side. And that's a difficult thing to comprehend sometimes, is that because you get pushed in so many different directions, and there's so many demands on you, that it almost feels at all times that they have to pick a side, but you don't. You only got one side, and that's the company side. There's an interesting function within an organization. As I said, if finance looks after the money, if supply chain and operations is the hands and people of the organization, and top management is the brains, and marketing is the mouth, then the heart is HR, and they're supposed to hold the values of the organization. HR is a key activity in the value chain. The South African Board of People Practices model is a good blueprint to try to professionalize HR. The HR value chain is also the employee value chain. Good HR equals good performance, and HR is also the ethical gatekeeper of the organization. And I hope that through these past few weeks, you've sort of seen, using Porter's value chain, you've sort of seen how each one of these activities functions with the organization are value additive, which means they add value to what comes in. There's a transformation that takes place. There's this value additive process that delivers the margin for the organization. And again, margin is just what the company is selling their product for and what they're making it for, delivering their service for, and what it costs them to deliver that service, whether you're selling widgets or whether you're selling a service by making coffee. And I hope you're sort of beginning to see how all the different pieces fit together like a puzzle. Thank you very much, everybody. That was great. Are there any questions on tonight's session? Or any questions about the course generally, in general? Especially around the administration of the course. If there's anything that you want to improve, if there's anything that you feel is not, you're not getting, please let me know or drop me an email if you don't feel open to chat. Okay, thank you, Loretta. I see Bongeka is also busy typing. Yeah. I can't believe we're already in week 7. Jeez. This module have gone by so quickly, so quickly. I quite enjoyed spending the time with you guys. All right, and I see Loretta is also typing. We'll just wait for those notes to come through. Oh, all right, you just have no question. Okay, no problem. Okay, awesome. No problem. Thank you very much, Loretta. I appreciate it. Great stuff.
Sorry.
I will see you guys. Let me just stop. Also, this thing will continue recording. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody.